Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar Accelerating Rare Disease Drug Discovery Utilizing the Unique Finnish Real-World Evidence Data Treasure. I'm Oliver from Invest in Finland, and before we start with the presentation, I'll quickly go through the practicalities. First, this webinar is recorded and you'll get a message afterwards on how to access the recording. Second, if you have any questions, please write them down in the Q&A chat window and also at the presenter you want to answer it. To give you a little background, who we from Business Finland, and more precisely its unit Invest in Finland are, I have one slide summarizing our services. We help foreign companies internationalize to Finland. This can be green and brownfield investment, as well as scouting for technologies, therapeutic R&D programs of any stage, and also M&A targets. We also actively support collaborations, projects, and joint ventures with Finnish stakeholders, not only with advice, but also with funding. All our services are absolutely confidential and free of charge. So if you have any questions, want to get in touch with the ecosystems of certain stakeholders and work together with Finland, please get in touch with Taya or me, and we'll help you or get you connected with the right people. So this is Taya.
Yes, hello, my name is Tarja Enala. I'm a senior advisor in health and well-being ecosystems and Invest in Finland. And my location is in Business Finland headquarters here in Helsinki. Welcome to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Taya. And now please welcome Miriam Holstein, the CEO of BioNordic, and her presentation, Innovate and Invest in Finland, a multinational company perspective. Miriam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and welcome to and from Finland. Tervetuloa Suomeen. My name is Miriam Holstein and I'm the CEO of BioNordic, which is a country group comprising the 8 countries, Scandinavia, Baltic and Finland. I'm very happy to be here today and to speak to you about Bayer's experiences of Finland as a place to invest and innovate in. And to me personally, my background is in corporate finance as well as in legal. So I hope I can say that I'm quite familiar with investment decisions. And actually, there are great many things to consider in that regard. And as you also probably might know, Bayer announced only a couple of weeks ago a 35 million euro investment into our production site here in Turku, which really shows to us that Finland ticks all the boxes for that. But before we go into that, and I'll tell you a little bit more, I would like to say a few words about myself and my story, how that is connected to Finland and how I experience Finland as a place to live and work in. And I think it makes it a little bit more concrete for you and more tangible, especially when you are considering about Finland as a business location. So I have been in Finland for 3 years now, and I must say I had a little bit of insider knowledge as my husband is Finnish. However, I also have to say that when living here now, there were also quite some things where I was really surprised about when I found out about them. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And click once again, please. So when people think about Finland, they normally picture the nature with northern lights, with Lapland, reindeers, the famous mökki, the summer house, saunas, of course. But I mean, Finland has a lot more to offer. And if we go to the next, I must say that I had been really, really impressed by actually 4 main things here. That is, first of all, Finland's innovativeness, the digital maturity, also the excellent education you find here everywhere around, and also the culture of collaboration. But I also noticed other things, might maybe not so much be a surprise, but one is really, don't be fooled by the Finnish modesty. I really have experienced here that with the colleagues around and partners who we are collaborating with, that I mean, they are very often world leaders in their fields, but don't talk about that at all and don't mention it. So don't be fooled about that. And also when you think about implementation, my experience is that in Finland is a promise really a promise. So you see here that is an expression of the strong work ethics you see here, so you really get things done. And I can only encourage you, don't step away if you don't get a positively overwhelming message right at the beginning. That might look differently than it is. Of course, I very much enjoy also the traditional side of Finland, the nature, but I would like now in my next slides focus a little bit more on the modern high-tech side. And so why is Finland so important for us? Well, within the Bayer Group, actually, Finland plays a very important role. So to start with, since 2011, we have our Nordic headquarters for the whole Nordic region, the 8 countries I was mentioning at the beginning, located here in Espoo. And in Finland, we employ about 950 people, and they are in both in Espoo as well as in Turku. And well, we are among the top taxpayers also here in Finland. So we are creating quite some value for the society here. And actually our operations cover the whole value chain from R&D production to sales and marketing and distribution. So all in all, I would say Bayer has a quite large footprint here in Finland. And I can assure you my aim is also to keep it that way and to increase it even more. But now you might ask, why is it that Finland plays such a big role for Bayer? And if we go to the next slide, here you see our activities in Turku. In Turku, you could say what happens for us in Turku is like the heavyweight of our business. The Turku site is one of the most significant pharmaceutical sites within Bayer globally. And its history is really closely connected to the invention and development of the contraceptive device, the hormonal coil, which is produced here and which is exported to over 130 countries worldwide. And this is actually a really, really good example for a Finnish invention. It was invented here 30 years ago and since then continuously developed further. Now next month upcoming, we will have our big 30-year anniversary. So really something to celebrate, especially also in light of the development, sales development here. Since 2016, this products or product group really makes it to the blockbuster status. It's the 3rd best selling within pharmaceutical at Bayer. So really important for us. And I think one of the success factors we have here is that we have both the production as well as R&D under one roof, working side by side and really enabling easy collaboration. It has, of course, been a long journey and led to the significant growth, including the investment I mentioned at the beginning. But well, that is not all what we have here in Finland. So if you go to the next slide, you see well what we do here in Espoo, and that is the second strong pillar of our Finnish activities. Many people actually do not know about what happens in Espoo. I mean, in Turku, a production site that can be seen and that is visible and making a huge part of the city, of course. But here from Espoo, something really exciting and interesting is happening. So from here, we manage actually global clinical trials. This is one of the largest centers around Bayer for clinical trial management. We currently have about more than 30 clinical trials which are managed here in over 40 countries involving thousands of patients. And these studies are mostly in the areas you see here on the slide, mainly oncology and cardiology. For us, this is a very exciting area as it requires people with real expertise, and this is what we find here. The people with a university degree, highly educated. So far, that had been really an asset. And actually, I can only say we are competing with other buyer entities around the world for getting the talent. So if I have someone who qualifies for that job, I might get the job instead of my colleague in China or in the US. In addition, I think what really is crucial here is collaboration. And I would say collaboration is here written with a capital C. We have many ongoing collaborations in that area, be it with universities, be it with other multinational companies, or more in the startup scene. So all in all, very interesting, although maybe not so visible to the outside. So now you might go even one step further and ask, why is Finland now so special and such a great place for innovations and investments? And this can be seen then on the next slide. I would say it's the people, it's the external landscape, and it's also the assets. As to people, I mean, we have a strong focus as a life science company onto R&D. And for R&D, we, as just said, need highly educated, highly qualified and skilled staff. And so far, I must say this has not been difficult. We found really good people here, and I would say this is also in a country which ranks high in the recent PISA studies. This really shouldn't come as a surprise. But also, if you have a look at the second point, the external landscape, also here, take the recent innovation index from the World Economic Forum. You see that having an innovation ecosystem, that is really crucial and key for coming up with innovation. And also here, Finland ranked high, and this makes it interesting for us again, because we need to work in an innovation ecosystem. It's absolutely clear for us, and this is also part of our strategy, that we cannot do everything alone, but we need to collaborate with the different players around. And I must say, this is something here in Finland, whether you talk about authorities, academia, startups, other research institutions such as VTT, for example. I mean, it's easy to connect with the people and really get things going and make things happening. And then we have the assets. And I think Finland has unique assets here. Maybe Finland is a little bit too modest talking about that, but I think most important and exciting certainly is the digital expertise. In general, you might be aware also of the EU Commission's Digital Economic and Society Index, which ranks digital performance and competitiveness, where Finland also ranks very high. But also more specific, I mean, our topic is healthcare and science here. Also here in the health sector, you really see outstanding healthcare. You have all the digital health records and a really good national biobank network. And I would assume that you hear a little bit more with the other from the other speakers. And of course, also this goes hand in hand with the strong expertise in digitalization and technology. And just thinking of what you have there, if you combine those two things, then I think you can really come up with new ways of combining the traditional data with the digital data, and make use of that for clinical research. And in the end, I mean, shorten the periods to come up with innovations for the patients at less cost, because things go quicker. And all of that, I would say, then is kept off by, well, the mentioned Finnish expertise in running clinical research. This is then also combined with something you do not only find here in the health area, but in the public in general, a very open, innovation-friendly, trusting attitude towards research. And yeah, people are really willing to participate, and that of course helps a great deal if you compare that maybe with other countries where the openness is not much there. So all of that, I think, makes Finland also as a great test bed for global companies to, well, start something here, and if it turns out to be successful, to leverage it to your, well, global operations. So I mentioned the strong ecosystem and the collaboration among the different players, and this is illustrated here on the next slide quite nicely. Here you just see some of the many stakeholders, so it's by far not a complete picture, but you see the different areas here and how they join forces. And as said, it's really easy to connect with people here. No? I mean, the country is small, the population is smaller. I wouldn't go that far, at least from an outside-in perspective, to say everybody knows everybody, but maybe the Finnish colleagues here in the round can confirm it indeed is like that. And of course, I mean, this offers good opportunities. So if you are a leader or a senior manager considering to invest and where to invest, you of course have to weigh also a number of factors. And if you go to the next slide, I mean, there are a couple of things. So the first, of course, is that you do an analysis according to political, economic, social, cultural, technological, etc. aspects, and most probably, if you go through those, Finland will come out on top, I would say. No. Second aspect is especially in the health sector, that the Finnish government is really fully committed to developing the whole healthcare system further. We have the healthcare growth strategy in place, and therefore there is really the aim to do something together as an ecosystem and I mean, cross the borders which you otherwise might see here and there. And of course you can talk to Business Finland or Invest in Finland about potential funding in R&D or elsewhere. So you know who to reach here. And then, of course, I mean, if you do not want to or do not want to take my word for it here now, but you want to rather make your own data-driven decision, then I can just recommend to have a look at the well, different rankings, global rankings, which are out there. And I promise you, in most of the cases, you will find Finland in the top 10, if not in the top 5. No. So taking all of that together, the question actually for me should not so much be why invest in Finland, but it should rather be why not invest in Finland. And with that, I would like to thank you, hand back, and now we have a few minutes for questions, I think.
I think the time is running. I would suggest doing the question together at the end. Thank you very much, Miriam, for this great overview of Finland and why to invest there. Coming up is Marco Hautalati and Mirka Koivusalu, CEO and Scientific and Communication Manager from FINBB. Marco, Mirka, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and good afternoon, everybody. And I really enjoyed Miriam's presentation, and maybe I'm repeating some or same messages here, but that's just because we are so excited here in Finland. So so we are talking together with Mirka about the opportunities here in Finland for rare diseases and the research for rare diseases. So please, the first slide. So as we know, the common dilemma in R&D processes is that the drug development is very slow, complex, and very expensive process. As we know, it takes easily or an average 10 years and costs approximately is 2 billion euro to bring the product to the market to patients. So it's slow, it's complex and very expensive. So of course the common goal here is to improve the productivity. So simply defining the productivity here to shorten the time span from the start to when delivering the hope and the product to the patients. So solution, we have the common dilemma here is the solution is the access to different kind of things, which is shortening the time span. When it comes to Finnish biobanks and biobanks in general, in Finland we have access to samples, millions of samples. We do have the clinical data where you have access, researchers have access. We even have pre-pooled study participants based on our Finnish legislation and the consents given by the Finnish citizens. And we have access to experts like Mikko Seppänen and Mark Daly, you will hear afterwards. So all together, not separatively, all together, the access is the solution. How can we help you and how can we shorten the time span and help patients? What is of course the most important thing. So Miriam already covered why Finland, and it was nice to hear that. So what is so special about Finland and our biobanks? So actually it's the people, like Miriam already mentioned. We have been living in isolation for not just for hundreds of years, but thousands of years. And that has driven our Finnish genetics, what you will hear by Mark Daly later on. Something about Finnish culture. As Miriam explained and said already, we are willing to collaborate. We are able to collaborate. We are honest. We are super honest. And we keep our promises. And we are modest, sometimes maybe too modest. And last but not the least, we are maybe not the most talkative nation. So that's the Finnish culture. So and Finns, we do trust our healthcare system, which is very, very important. We are willing to participate different kind of biomedical research programs, clinical studies, and you name it. And the trust is delivering that we are donating our biobank samples to Finnish biobanks. So this is the people and culture, but of course when it comes to the operational environment, it's very, very important from the industry point of view that you can trust our system, that we do have our Biobank Act since 2013, for instance. So we can be sure that we are doing the right thing in the right way, and the governance and processes are in place, which is super, super important when conducting the studies. As mentioned already, we do have the high quality healthcare system in place. We have a healthcare record since 1960s. We do have the longitudinal data in place. And when it comes to our treatment outcomes, let's take, for instance, breast cancer. We have one of the best or the best treatment outcomes in the world, together with, for instance, Sweden. So we do have the high quality healthcare system in place. So what is so special in the Finnish biobank system and services? What we are extremely proud and excited about is our Fingenious service, what is a first-in-class system and service in Europe, where all public biobanks are covered. We are a small country, but we have 11 million samples available for different kind of research programs, 11 million. And what is even more exciting that we will have now soon 500,000 samples genotyped by Fingenious study. And some of these patients who have donated the samples are recallable. In other words, we can recontact the biobank donators. So yes, please, next one. So a couple of words about Finnish biobanks and FINBB. So I'm the CEO of FINBB since 2018. FINBB, our mission is to serve researchers from academy and industry and making sure that everything goes smoothly. We have strong and trustable founding partners. The 6 biggest hospital districts in Finland, our 6 universities, and late 2019, Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare joined our network. And we offer the one access shop. I don't want to use the one-stop shops, but one access shop, so to make everything easy and fast. And what is important when it comes to the business model is that whatever we are doing, we give the value back to hospitals where the patients are treated, back to universities where the science is going to take place. But that's very important that when collaborating with Finnish biobanks and FINBB, you can be sure that the value is given back to the hospitals and universities. Okay, Fingenious. What is Fingenious? So it's simply as we can read it from here. It's a digital gateway to Finnish biobanks, covering all public biobanks and biomedical research. And maybe next one. So this is in a nutshell. As I already mentioned, it's the first-in-class service in Europe, covering all public biobanks in Finland. And it's built up to serve researchers from academy or industry and enhance the whole collaboration. And what is important to also notice here that the system is increasing the productivity, for instance, from the contracting point of view, that you don't need to make, let's say, 6, 7 separate contracts, but you need only one contract, which is very important from the industry point of view. Next one. So ecosystems, there are different kind of ecosystems. So how everything fits together. This is one example. From left side, you can see the Finnish ecosystem, universities, hospitals, hospital districts, all public biobanks, and very important strategic collaborators who are collaborating together and in order to make things happen. And from the right side, you can see the researchers, that how do you see Finland? So simply you need Fingenious, and you can find the patients, you can find the data, you can find the target samples as needed and as defined in your study protocol. And having one contract instead of having 5, 6, 7, or you name it, contracts in place. So this is the service in nutshell. As we mentioned, Miriam and I mentioned that you can trust us. You can trust Finns. This is one example about the trust, and we deliver what we have promised. FINGEN, which is a great public-private biobank study. Actually, one reason why why I was so excited when I heard first time about the Biobank collaboration is that Finnish biobanks have delivered already over 411,000 samples, and our target was or is actually to deliver by 2023 500,000 of samples. So if we promise something, Finnish biobanks and Finns will deliver. That's the key message here. And another key message here is that Finland is a small country, but I guess that you don't find this similar kind of approach anywhere else, where 12 leading biopharmaceutical companies and the healthcare system and the biobanks are collaborating like we are collaborating here in Finland, shown by Fingenious. Just a short example that the biobank studies, as the biobank law legislation was in place 2013, you can see the number of biobank studies is growing, and I'm happy to say that 2020 the growth has been at the same level even with the COVID situation in Europe and in Finland and all over the world. So number of biobank studies is growing, and maybe I will stop in these two slides here. So let's take a snapshot at rare diseases. This is one example. As we all know, there are over 8,000 different rare diseases defined and in place. Unfortunately, very small portion or number of these diseases have specific treatment in place. And I just took one example, one group at neuromuscular diseases, and you can see here, this was in October 2018, that different companies were focusing mainly on ALS and Duchenne and other neuromuscular diseases, and trying to find the hope and treatment by different kind of mechanism of actions, from small molecules to gene therapies, antisense oligonucleotides, and so on. So this is one example, and I would like to show that, okay, let's take neuromuscular diseases and what do we have here in Finland. Let's take ALS, which is a very devastating disease, and there is no disease modifying treatment available currently for the patients. So we do have 261 samples and genotyped, and the genotype data available in Finnish biobanks for different kind of studies. We do have SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. Here you can see the cluster of different kind of SMAs, type 1, 2, 3, and maybe also type 4, which is quite prevalent here in Finland. Just an example that yes, we do have samples from rare diseases patients, and yes, some of them are genotyped, and yes, you have access by Fingenious to these diseases. So maybe I will stop here and I will hand it over to Mirka, and Mirka will explain in practice how everything will take place and how everything works. Please, Mirka.
Perfect. Thank you, Marco. So I work as a scientific and communications manager at FINBB, and I will talk to you about how to access samples and data via the Fingenious service at a more, I'll talk you through it at a more practical level. At FINBB, we don't by any means work alone. We work very closely together with Biobanks to provide the Fingenious service. So this slide illustrates just the level or kind of the range of expertise of the staff working at the biobanks. So there's people with different roles, and the point being here that the expertise is in various areas ranging from the sample collection and processing to different types of analytical techniques, all the way to data analytics and information technology. So we work together as a team to create this service for researchers. One extremely important and also fantastic thing about the Finnish Biobank structure is that, as Marko already mentioned, it's based on this sort of, you can think of it as a positive feedback loop of continuous data enrichment. So biobanks, they provide samples and data for the researchers, for the research, and then the data after typically a certain embargo period is returned back to the biobanks. And of course, here in Finland, we've already heard about FINGEN, and we will hear about FINGEN from Mark daily as well. So FINGEN is a fantastic example where all this genotyped data is released back to the biobanks every 6 months and is there then available for other researchers as well. I also prepared this slide to illustrate the data enrichment more at a practical level. So on the left-hand side there, you can think of the biobanks as repositories of millions and millions of samples, as well as, of course, the data. The majority of the samples in the biobanks, they are what we call legacy samples, but there is also a continuous flow of new samples coming in. And these are then the samples that are used for research studies, such as the FINGEN project. And here is again the graph that Marko showed about the neuromuscular diseases, the numbers of neuromuscular diseases, disease samples that have been GWAS analyzed in the FINGEN. So all of this data is then returned to the originating biobanks every 6 months. And through our Fingenious service, it is then available for further research. And through the Fingenious service, you can also then access data returned from other biobank studies, as well as, of course, the samples and clinical and other longitudinal health record data. The way Fingenious service works in practice is that we've created these 3 simple steps for researchers to follow. This is just an overview. First of all, we have what we call the Fingenious catalog, which is an aggregate level browsing catalog where you can search for your disease of interest by their ICD-10 codes. You can find out sample numbers at a sort of upper level. Then to get a more detailed picture about the availability of samples and data in the biobanks, then the researchers fill in a more detailed feasibility request. And if after the feasibility request, it seems like that the Finnish biobanks have the samples and the data required to conduct a study, then we proceed to the 3rd step, which is the access request. And this is where the researcher will be able to access the samples and data for the study. Fingenious is a process that we're constantly developing, and this is the current pathway for the researchers. I'll just talk you through the 3 steps in slightly more detail quickly. So the first step, if you are interested, and hopefully you are, in conducting a biobank study in Finland, the first step is to register for free at fingenious.fi, where you will get access to the Fingenious catalog, where you can do the quick upper level screening at aggregate level. Then to get more details about the availability, then you can proceed straight from there into the Fingenious feasibility. And by filling in this request, you provide a little bit more detail about the project and more detailed specifications for the samples and data required. And at the end of this process, you will receive a feasibility report with the details. There's sort of 2 tiers into the report. The simple ones are provided at no cost. If more labor-intensive data searches or consultations with clinicians are required, then these will be cost-based feasibilities. And then the final step, which is the beef, so to speak, is the Fingenious access. And as Marko already said, The beauty of the Fingenious process is that it's a harmonized process through FINBB, so you fill in just one request. At this point, the study is also subject to an ethical review, and then after the biobanks have given their access decisions for giving out the samples and the data, that's when you can start your study. So these are the 3 steps currently in Fingenious. Just as a teaser at the end, we'd like to introduce you to a new service that we are developing in the Fingenious service. So as I just explained, currently you have the biospecimens and the biodata. You also will get information on the number of patients that you can potentially recontact or recall for a further study. But currently under development, we also have a trial participant recontacting service that in the future, hopefully soon, will be available through the Fingenious service as well. So if you would like more information about this service, we are more than happy to provide you more info on that. So 3 take-home messages from our presentation that we'd like you to walk away with is that through Fingenious, you really will have access to the unique Finnish biobank data. And the FinGen project, it creates new fantastic international research opportunities, and all of this is accessible to you. The first step would be to register at fingenious.fi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco and Milka. We've decided to take all the questions in the end of this webinar. And now I'd like to welcome Mark Daly, Director of the Institute of Molecular Medicine, Finland. He will tell us more about rare diseases in FinGen. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Oliver. Great to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I'm going to obviously continue the theme on discussing FinGen, and hopefully you can see the slides. With a little bit of a focus on how we're using this very large population resource now as a tool to also study rare diseases. I'm the director of the Institute for Molecular Medicine, which is the sort of host institution of the project, and my colleague Arno Palotie is the leader of the FinGen project, and I'll mention him a few times later. FIMM is a translational institute affiliated with the University of Helsinki and also the EMBL, and it has a focus on entirely human-based and translational-based research. And so we study with molecular tools, with genomic tools, with health data, the Finnish medical population, and try to convert discoveries and information back into improvements to healthcare. And so the FinGen project is a leading example of what our institute emphasizes and tries to deliver on. And we, Arno and I, began to conceive of this project, quite many years ago now, probably almost 10 years ago, because we realized the resources that you've been hearing about in Finland are really quite unique for several reasons that I'll get into. But that we have a goal and a mission, which is to alleviate disease for our citizens. And we have always recognized that this is a challenge because new medicines, of course, and medical technologies obviously require industry, but progress in delivering results from industry relies enormously on basic scientific discovery. And so we took as our approach, understanding this challenge or this duality in mind, that it really had to be the case that basic scientific discovery and industrial innovation need to work together in order to, not only for the FinGen project, but in any biomedical endeavor, to advance the goals of society, to deliver improvements to healthcare. And that's the mindset that we took to the FinGen project, that we were not just interested in developing a research project for our publications or because it would be fun or whatever. We wanted to build something in our field that was a unique resource that would be utilized in industry to advance medicine. And so this, as you've been hearing, emanates from the remarkable opportunities that exist in Finland, both from the citizens, the national health registers that are collected, the enormous biobanking infrastructure that you've heard about in the last talks from Marco and Mirka, and then figuring out how we can utilize these resources, both in our basic research, but then in clinical research, both of which have natural partnerships in industry, to combine to make discoveries that ultimately lead to potential new medicines and interventions that really bring things back to the citizens from which it started. And when our thinking, Arno and my thinking about developing such a resource in Finland took off was with the enactment of the Finnish Biobank Act, which is really still at this point, 7 years later, a unique in all of the world opportunity in that the environment and the ecosystem that it created for a number of reasons that are listed on this slide. And among those, the abilities to track, to recontact individuals, to consent in a broad way, not for each specific medical study individually, but also describing and how collaboration with industry could be done with these remarkable healthcare resources of the population. And that's further been strengthened last year with the secondary use of registry data law. And so national health data is uniquely available to research and innovation in Finland in a way that it is not in most other places. And that's because of a great trust of the population in science and medicine and research that often does not exist, certainly not in my home country of the US right now. And what this ecosystem sets up is the opportunity that you were hearing about in the last talk, in which individuals, when they give consent and give a sample, immediately are connected with a lifelong medical information from many and many more than listed here, registers collected, legally mandated to be collected on all Finnish citizens, whether you're receiving private or public health care. And these stretch back, in some cases, now 50 years of information on members of the population with respect to diagnoses, with respect to prescription medications, all prescription drug purchases since 1995. And this creates then an opportunity where we can begin to conduct research in cross-sectional fashion, who has illness X today versus people that don't have it, but in a much more lifelong and longitudinal fashion. And so this really is the heart of what the FinGen project is all about. The FinGen project is really, to my knowledge, one of the most successful examples of a real, genuine public-private partnership in which all participants are actively contributing to the design of the activity and actively working together to maximize the impact on all outputs. This project obviously would not have happened without the support of Business Finland, and bringing 12 pharmaceutical companies to the table with every Finnish biobank and medical school has created a really tremendous ecosystem. And as you heard in the last talk, has created now already a remarkable data resource that is much more broadly available through the FINBB and the Fingenious platform. Now, essential to this activity are a few points. Obviously, security and consent are always the first priority. The trust of the population in the legitimacy and the importance of what they're doing cannot be broken in any way. And so there's no higher priority than maintaining that trust. And as I've already mentioned, the foundation of this lies in the national legislation, which remarkably addresses all of these issues in some detail. The secure computing environment is something that comes up often, like how can we have researchers overseas or researchers in industry accessing secure and personal individual health data from individuals in the population, from national registry data. And that's constructed through a very carefully constructed and audited environment, which exists on Google Cloud, all data remains in the EU, and creates a framework in which individuals who are sort of certified by the national health registries in Finland, can gain access to a compute environment. They cannot take the data, copy the data, but they can essentially, in a secure environment, run computing tasks on the data. So bring computing tasks and ideas that can be executed on the data, but the data remains secure. And so the FinGen project has been running now for a little more than 3 years. The data freezes every 6 months. The data is returned to the biobanks, then made available through Fingenious portal for researchers around the world, whether or not you're a participating industry member or academic member of the project. And you can see here that if anything, the project is ahead of its target of reaching 500,000 FIMMs by 2023. And on the scientific side, in addition to the sort of unique legal infrastructure and organized Nordic healthcare system of data that creates this environment, we have another more hidden advantage, which is the isolated nature of the population, both geographic and linguistic, that has created a particularly favorable genetic opportunity in Finland. And that comes from the fact that all the variation that exists in the world, there are many, many ultra-rare disease-causing mutations. And you can just think of any example that you're familiar with, BRCA1, BRCA2, where when you collect families in the general population of Eurasia, you will find that most families have their own unique mutation in these genes. What happens in the scenario of the bottleneck is that very few of those rare variants get through into the founding population, but after the population is founded and begins to grow, those few mutations are now at a much higher frequency and essentially dominate the allele frequency spectrum of mutations. And so we have a great opportunity with the population of Finland that has been known for many decades to study rare diseases and rare and high impact genetic mutations in the Finnish population that does not exist in many other parts of the world. And so I had the postdoctoral student, Henrika, who presented last night at the American Society of Human Genetics meeting on this exact topic, where we can now survey in the FinGen resource hundreds of variants that are known to cause disease, most severe and Mendelian disease. And until now, there has not been resources that provide an opportunity to study this type of mutation in a large population and to search and understand what, for example, the impact of parents who carry a single copy of a recessive mutation might be. This FinGen resource allows us now to really dig into rare diseases in a much more detailed and important way. And so we've already found a number of examples here, just a few that are highlighted, where indeed disease mutations that are considered to be recessive in nature, for example, the xeroderma pigmentosa gene, actually in heterozygous state have significant risks associated with them, not for xeroderma pigmentosa, but for skin cancer, unsurprisingly. While, in a few other cases, for example, the RP genes, these truly are purely recessive and seem to have no adverse effect in the heterozygous state. So here's the xeroderma pigmentosa example. And so what Henrika then asked was, could we find new rare disease causes using the FinGen resource if we can so easily validate some that are already known from the Finnish disease heritage? And in fact, she has gone on to do that using one as an example that was known, GJB2. This is a well-known cause of hearing loss at generally a very early age. But what you can see on this graph, and there'll be a few more of these, is that individuals who have 2 copies of a loss of function mutation in this gene have a very early onset and a very high penetrance onset of hearing loss, whereas individuals who carry 1 copy of that loss of function mutation with a different heterozygous mutation have a hearing loss that onsets in the middle age, but is also very high penetrance. And so she has now documented and described a number of additional recessive disease soon be added to the Finnish disease heritage lists, we expect. And no need to go through the examples, but there are quite many of them that begin to emerge. And these constitute new, rare, and often very high penetrance causes of disease that have not been previously documented. For example, a high penetrance cause of cataract that individuals, even at retirement age, 50% of them will have been diagnosed with cataracts, which is obviously remarkably early for cataracts. And again, a new, entirely novel Finnish cause of recessive sensorineural hearing loss that has an onset very, relatively early in life and in young adulthood. In addition, the general studies of rare disease now begin to broaden across the entire clinical spectrum. For example, many rare cancers, which affect fewer than 1 in 1,000 individuals, we now, with the scale of the FinGen resource, have several hundred copies of and can begin to identify novel Finnish-specific, as it were, causes of disease. For example, a missense variant in LGR5, which is relatively infrequent, but still relatively common in Finland and Estonia, but enormously rare in the rest of the world. Sorry about that. Is identified, and if you know anything about the gene LGR5, you couldn't have a better candidate for an intestinal cancer phenotype. And novel causes of anemia, which our colleagues at the Blood Service are eagerly following up and have already validated in the general collection of individuals with respect to iron levels measured in the blood. And so these really are beginning to deliver the first fruits of results from the FinGen project. And with respect to both common and especially rare diseases, these new discoveries are now generating sort of jumping off points, launching points for new therapeutic hypotheses that are now being pursued both by academic colleagues as well as the industry partners in the project, and also in some cases are generating novel diagnostic tests that have not been available previously. And so I have just a few general points, but we can probably, in the interest of time, move past these about industry and academia partnerships. But I think what this project is clearly reinforcing is that this academia industry partnership really does have to be a two-way street, and that taking diverse mindsets and approaches to common challenges in society really is important. And the idea exchange has been tremendous. Both the academic and industry side have contributed a lot to the design of the. And I think what's successful about this is that we really have shared goals, not simply exchanging for money, expertise, or access to data, but really shared goals to mine this valuable Finnish resources for medical discovery and for the betterment of society. And then from our specific case, here's just a few points, ending with the one that I emphasized earlier, that this works very well in Finland, and other studies of this nature will work very well in Finland, because academic medicine and academic medical research is highly trusted. So maintaining that public trust and acting consistent with it and making sure that everyone recognizes we're acting in the public interest is essential to meeting our goals for this project, but essential for continuing to maintain the confidence and the public investment in this ecosystem. So with that, I will just say kiitos, thanks, and happy to take questions in the Q&A section.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark. And with that, I'd like to go to our next presenter, Mikko Seppänen, Chief of the Rare Disease Center of Helsinki University Hospital. His talk is titled Actionable AI-Assisted Registry Studies and Finnish Act on Secondary Use of Healthcare Data. Possible or an oxymoron? Mikko, we are all ears.
All right. Do you want me to share the slides, or will you share the slides?
Can you share the slides?
All right. Yeah, definitely. Can you see them now?
Yes, one moment. Go forward, Mikko.
All right. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here. This is a presentation on not biobanks, but on artificial intelligence-based registry studies. My background is that of a clinical immunologist, and I have exploited the advantage of studying Finnish genomic variants in my career as an immunogeneticist. We have been involved in, I think, soon 13 different new phenotypes or new genes for inborn errors of immunity, but I would like to focus now on the use of AI. The hospital you see here is our brand new children's hospital where I'm affiliated to, and it's Moomin themed environment. I have no disclosures except that the cartoon of a doctor drawn here is after Klasberg, and I did draw it myself. So AI, promise or hoax? I think for years we've all in the clinic have been expecting to see AI aids for faster diagnosis and better treatment of patients. But there are still practical prospective studies and applications missing. And of course, that has a lot to do with the obstacles. There are obstacles with data security and the laws governing it, and the privacy laws, and also with the problems with getting representative collection of people to participate in the studies, because if you have a skewed population in an AI study, it very easily leads to automated racism and discrimination in decision making due to the skewed study populations and due to the AI's inherent inability to empathy, intuition, fairness, and ethicalness. So this is how we have tackled the problem. For the patients with rare diseases, such problems, delayed diagnosis and the lack of therapies is no trifle matter. In our unpublished data, we know that in Finland, about 6% of population suffer from a rare disease, and 18% of the total cost of tertiary care actually is caused by rare diseases. Those figures are about the same as for, let's say, mental disorders in the whole of population. It's treatment and how often they affect the population, severe mental problems. And everybody knows that they cause a lot of hospital and healthcare spending. But also complicated rare systemic diseases suffer from delayed diagnosis, even if they'd be treatable. And there's highly significant failure demand. Here I have some curves that are unpublished. Here are total costs per patient for a rare disease patient versus average patient in each age group. And you see that the higher curve is the rare diseases patient curve, and the excess of expenditure is throughout the life, and it's even more significant in the later ages than in after the first year of life, which might come as a surprise to many of you. And also the total costs per age group, that's even more significant. And here you see that there are even more significantly rare diseases cause excessive healthcare expenditure. Here is a representative patient path of a highly expensive rare disease patient. All these dots represent points of care, and the red ones are those that the patient met previous to the rare disease diagnosis. Before that was reached, the red ones are the ones that they visited more than once, and the blue ones where they did go for one consultation only. So, can we create registry studies that would be actionable, meaning that we actually do something about it and we use them in everyday clinical work, first in research and maybe later as an AI algorithm? Well, we actually have a law that was passed in 2019 that implies that this is possible. The Act on the Secondary Use of Healthcare Data, its section or clause 55 on rights, responsibilities and actions due to clinically actionable findings states that the grantee of data permit has the right to inform person in charge appointed by the Health and Social Data Permit Authority or FINBB about clinically actionable findings based on which there is potential to prevent the patient's health-related risk or improve quality of care significantly. This means that even the registry studies where the patients only have had the opt-out opinion, where they they inform the healthcare provider that they do not want to have any use of their data for healthcare registry studies, and those are few in Finland, only those would be excluded. And if we find through AI studies an actionable finding, there's a procedure by which actually the patient will be remitted and evaluated and treated in the clinic earlier than they would normally receive that therapy compared to historical data. So there is actually a route. And so we are doing registry studies in HUS data lake, and we are now applying for actionable permits. We do these on rare diseases where we try to do AI-assisted clinical decision-making tools, and the algorithms are the only ones that leave the HUS data lake, because HUS, as one of the university hospitals and actually as the 10th biggest hospital in the world, according to Wikipedia, we have a very highly structured and highly sophisticated data lake where we can do all these gimmicks and algorithm honing to get a probability threshold that even after pseudonymized expert judgment seems actionable, and we would be able to alert the authorities and the clinics about this. Thus we are now applying permits for such a study on certain rare but not excessively rare diseases which would be treatable and which should lead to such an actionable procedures. And we will only ourselves do this, which is in a research environment, and it will remain pseudonymized for us. So we will not be able to identify these patients, but we will be able to give alerts to the FINDB expert judgment, and their procedure would eventually lead to the regional responsible unit contacting the patient, asking patient consent to facilitate the remit and routine evaluation in the clinic. And eventually, when they will enter HUS due to their rare and actionable disease, we will get the feedback whether we reached the diagnosis and were able to prevent serious life-threatening complications better than compared to the historical controls. But what we are in the process of doing is that we have the retrospective registry studies and permissions. we have the local ethics or IRB assessment and with positive results. And at the moment, our permits are pending for the National Ethics Board, for the FINDB Data Permission, and for the Office of the Data Protection Ombudsman. All these will be needed to get the HUS registry permission to do such an actionable study. We have pre-assessed our study in the FINDB Healthcare Authority, and who are responsible for the interpretation of this act. And they say that this should be perfectly doable. So we are living exciting times, but it seems that in Finland, for the first time in the world, there will be a way to actionably do AI research. Let's hope that this happens, because actually this would be, among other things, it would be, of course, compliant with the GDPR and compliant with the Finnish legislation, and it will be also compliant with the European Commission white paper on the use of artificial intelligence and how it primarily should be used in Europe. So let's see what happens. Thanks to all, and I think now it will be the time to enter the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Mikko. And the Q&A is open. So, Tarja, what kind of questions do we have? By the way, Miriam already had to leave, so I'm sorry to say if there were any questions directed to her, we can't answer them right now.
Yes, okay. So yeah, we have some questions here. So first of all, thank you very, very much for all the speakers for very, very nice presentations. First question, how to overcome the limitation of ultra rare diseases when looking at indications with a prevalence of 1 in 1 million versus Finnish population of about 6 million, and even with accumulated samples in biobanks?
I can take a shot. I mean, I guess